Good morning, church family. This morning we turn to Psalm 80 as we go through the Psalms. John Calvin wrote in his introduction to this psalm, "This is a sorrowful prayer." And we'll see it certainly is. It's the prayer we bring to God when nothing seems to be going the way it ought to be. Let's look at it together. This is one of those psalms that has a refrain. 3 times it says the same thing. Restore us, O God. Let your face shine that we may be saved. You see it in verse 3, verse 7, and then all the way at the end in verse 19. And in between that, you have a call to God. The psalm starts out in the first 2 verses by emphasizing that God is the king who reigns over everything. And after that refrain, it turns to the fact that the psalmist is suffering. And then the refrain comes again, and then after that, the psalm calls out to God who is king for restoration. It calls for him to do for his people what he had done for them of old. Look at verses 8 to 12 in particular. You brought a vine out of Egypt. You drove out nations and planted it. So verse 8 then is a reference to the Exodus and to God giving his people the promised land. You cleared the ground for it. It took deep root and filled the land. The mountains were covered with its shade, the mighty cedars with its branches. It sent out its branches to the sea and its shoots to the river. So this recounts the time under Solomon when Israel spread to its largest reign, its largest area of control. But then look at verse 12. Why then have you broken down its walls, so that all who pass along the way pluck its fruit? And the psalm from there goes on until the end to talk about how bad things have gotten. And so the psalmist cries out with the refrain, God, please come, please save us. And realize that this image of a planted vine is exactly what we preached about only a couple weeks ago from John 15. I am, Jesus says, the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit he takes away, and every branch that does bear fruit he prunes so that it may bear more fruit. So when the psalmist talks about Israel as a vine, it gives us a hint of what's coming, that Jesus himself is the true vine that we can look forward to. So church, as we go through our day today with Psalm 80 in front of us, remember that Jesus is the one to whom we pray. And when we cry out in sorrow about the world and the state of things, we know that he still reigns and he will hear our prayers.